A very good morning to you. Welcome to AM Live. This Wednesday, we continue the conversation on GMOs, and together with my expert panel of scientists, we answer your questions. But before then, let me introduce myself. My name is Olive Burrows, and these are the stories making headlines. A section of National Assembly members are threatening to impeach Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria over his plans to allow the importation of 10 million bags of GMO maize. It is also emerging that a ship with 10,000 tons of maize is set to dock in Mombasa, further fueling the debate on just under what Gazette notice the importation was done. But even as that happens, Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah has intimated that members of Parliament could be pushing for personal interests on the GMO issue. NTV's Sydney Chazima kicks us off on AM Live.
The debate on the importation of GMO maize has taken a new trajectory. MPs drawn across the political divide have united in opposing the plan by Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria to import 10 million bags of GMO maize for the next 6 months. And now, Pokot West MP David Kosing has threatened to initiate an impeachment process against Moses Kuria.
I want to tell Honorable Moses Kuria, he will be the first cabinet minister to leave office. And he might leave office before the end of this month, or before Christmas. If he continues this, we will impeach him. We will collect signatures from tomorrow. If it doesn't change, he will be the first cabinet minister under this administration to go home. He is not above the law or above the people of Kenya. And he should listen to farmers.
According to information from the Kenya Ports Authority, a consignment of 10,000 tons of maize is on board an African marlin vessel. NTV cannot independently verify where the maize is coming from, who the importer is, and whether it is GMO or not. This information appears to have irked legislators who claim the importation is not supported by a Gazette notice.
In this country, we've got laws. And before you import something, there are rules and procedures to do that. So we cannot have a ship docking even, before we gazette the importation. So we are saying that is completely unacceptable. We want that to be reversed.
Equally, the legislators insist that GMO maize will saturate the market, therefore causing losses to local farmers.
It is very mischievous for this government of President William Ruto to now want to import maize, because the net effect of that is that it's going to saturate imported maize on the market, and the prices are going to be low. Farmers have invested very heavily in this season especially. So we are saying no. We are saying no and no and no.
Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi is alleging that an artificial shortage has been created to justify the need for importation.
Could we be creating an artificial shortage, creating a crisis, to enable racketeers to start benefiting from issues that actually are of great concern to the country?
But Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah questioned the spirited push against the GMOs by the MPs.
There are peddlers of fear out there, and they know they are peddling fear, Honorable Speaker, not because they are interested in the safety of the health of Kenyans, nor are they interested in the food security of our country, Honorable Speaker, but they are doing politics for the sake of...
The legislators have now threatened to head to court to seek redress over the issue.
One of the options that we've discussed is also going to court to obtain a prohibitory order of injunction. If all demands fail, then we also have the way of going to court to get an order of injunction to stop the CS, Moses Kuria, and the entire ministry from importing maize.
Sydney Chazima, NTV.
The Azimio One Kenya coalition wants an audit of all monies spent at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission after the August election, insinuating that there has been blatant misuse of public funds, especially on trips abroad. Led by Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, the legislators claim IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati and Commissioners Abdi Gulier and Boya Molu have wasted taxpayers' money on valueless foreign trips since September.
An independent audit be undertaken to establish expenditures incurred, particularly after the conclusion of the 2022 general election, and action taken where crime has been committed.
Chebukati and his fellow musketeers can continue with the rampant misuse of public funds, can continue with the illegalities, including irregular and illegal promotions of a select officers within the commission. He can continue with all these transgressions. But ultimately, and however long it takes, they shall be held to account individually.
IBC top management appears to be on a spending spree. Tens of millions of taxpayers' money is being spent by Wafula Chebukati, Hussein Majan, Abdi Gulie, and Boya Molu in a scheme that looks like a reward to those who ensured elections went in a particular predetermined way.
It's on record that William Ruto, the president, issued an embargo on foreign trips and other non-essential expenditures to all government agencies, including ministries and commissions. Why then is the IBC exempt from this moratorium?
All right, let's see what transpired at the Meru County Assembly with regard to a motion to impeach the Governor Kawira Mwangaza. That report by Vincent Odor.
Tuesday early morning, Meru County Assembly Minority Whip Dennis Kiogora tabled the motion on the floor of the House, seeking to impeach Governor Kawira Mwangaza. 68 out of 69 members of the County Assembly supported the motion. Ever since Mwangaza took office, she has had a strained relationship with the members of the Assembly, who are accusing her of being arrogant. In the motion, Kawira is being accused of abuse of office, nepotism, appointing her husband to a non-existent position, appointing unqualified persons, and usurping the constitutional and statutory functions of the Assembly.
Usurping and trashing exclusive constitutional and statutory functions and mandates of the Meru County Public Service Board and the Public Service Commission and the various boards that operate those departments. Firstly, accusing members of the County Assembly and other elected leaders of cartelism, blackmail, greed, corruption, and intimidation.
Kiagu MCA Simon Kiambi is the only member who did not support the motion, arguing it was politically instigated and that the impeachment grounds provided could not stand.
Mimi sikupewa nafasi nisome, ilikuwa kama tulikuwa tunashugumiwa tusaini, na mimi nikaona sita sign juu maneno ingine pale ni ya politicals. Si ati kuna maneno iko mingi sana, ni siasa tu. Nikaona wasa mimi nikafanyia watu wa Kiagu juu niko na imani na wao, watanirudisha tena nikuwe kiongozi wao.
On her side, Governor Kawira is accusing the MCAs of trying to twist her to illegally allocate them the Ward Development Fund.
Kila murungu atharimete otiomba kuruma. Na mwathani nontu no mweja ni wotongeria otuomba guita muntu utongerie nebo. Baba no tunenkere bu gatigati nega nchamba indito. Na mwathani aratuonene. Na ande bara 45 yanga isigistari bedu gane kwe biashara beneo. Ibo kwana yaka batobora. Bate tobora rietu enere Jesu. Twena murungu ro turage iguru. Twena Jehova ora wije gitumi kiao gya kuthithio na batena haki ndene yao.
In the event the County Assembly approves the impeachment motion, it will be forwarded to the Senate, which will investigate the grounds of impeachment before deciding to approve or reject the decision of the County Assembly. Vincent Odur, NTV.
The Nakuru Environment and Land Court has barred the family of former Commissioner of Lands Sami Mwaita from a 100 million shilling, parcel of land in which the Mwaitas lay claim. However, investigators reveal that the parcel of land where Kenha offices are located, is public land. In relation to that story, Hilary Mwaita, a brother to Sami Mwaita, had sought an injunction stopping the construction of Kenya's regional offices in Nakuru County, where the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission sought to be included in the case in December last year. Justice Anthony Ombwayo has since barred Hilary or his agents from transacting anything on the parcel of land until the case is determined. A Kiambu court has granted detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations 10 days to conclude a probe into the collapse of a 6-story building in Ruaka, where 2 people died. This means that 4 Kiambu County officials will continue being detained at the Karuri police station for 10 days to allow completion of the probe. According to a miscellaneous application filed by Police Stephen Bundi Njiraine, John Murimi Mobe, and Pauline Njeri Wanjiko, as well as Geoffrey Madhini Kamau, will be charged with manslaughter. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, through Helen Ngesa, said the case is complex and has attracted public attention, arguing that if the suspects are released, they are likely to interfere with investigations. The county officials will appear again before the Kiambu Principal Magistrate, Manuela Kinyanjui, for mention of the case on the 8th of December 2022. The Senate Health Committee now wants a clear assessment of emergency care preparedness and response at level 5 hospitals. This follows 3 cases of medical negligence reported at Mama Lucy Hospital, as well as the Kenyatta National Hospital, KNH. The committee further wants the Kenya Health Professionals Oversight Authority to outline the requirements needed before the upscaling of a facility from a level 2 or 3. This comes as a compiled report indicated that Mama Lucy Hospital did not have the capacity to handle Maureen Onyango's case, who died while giving birth to twins last month. She was referred to Kiambu Referral Hospital. Appearing before the Health Committee, the CEO of the Kenya Health Professionals Oversight Authority, Jackson Kioko, asked for 30 more days to be able to hand in a conclusive report following a non-corroborative report at the hearing.
Production phase of being now a qualified nurse, and we have what we call.
Thank you very much for attendance and your submission report.
A board or a task force, but then let's look at the infrastructure.
To the respective regulators who are in attendance today. After investigation, and this is how we usually do the investigations. After we do inspection, then it is followed by inquiries. Now we have already commenced the inquiries. It is only that this invitation came to us when we had not completed the inquiries. And that's why we are saying we are going to submit a detailed report after the inquiry in 30 days.
A man from Zimmerman presented himself to the Kasarani police station yesterday morning to confess that he stabbed to death a woman in his home. The man also presented to the police the weapon he allegedly used to murder the woman. The identity of the woman remains unknown as police continue with the probe. Gina Kiruri has more.
The neighbors of Joseph Njenga, a resident at Zimmerman area, hardly knew the secret behind the walls of his apartment this morning. That is until a flurry of activities featuring a contingent of police officers appeared at his home. Early in the morning, Njenga went to Kasarani police station where he turned himself in after allegedly confessing to murdering a 30-year-old woman. He then took police to the scene of crime to see for themselves.
Namujua kabisa. Hata ukimpepa tu mali kidogo anakupea shilingi 200. Mali penye nafaa 50 anakupea 200. Ni vyenye tu yale tumesitikika na tuko na mauchungu. Si kujua kama bebe inaweza kumwingilia afanye kitendo kama hiyo.
According to Kasarani Sub-County Police Commander Anthony Mbogo, Njenga says he only met the woman last night and went home with her. However, a disagreement occurred and Njenga stabbed the woman. He then waited until morning and with the knives in tow, presented himself at the police station.
We should strongly condemn it because as men and women out there, I don't believe violence is the way to go because kuwa mtu ni vibaya.
The woman's identity remains unknown as police say they are making efforts to trace her family so that they can make a positive identity.
Watoto wanauliwa kama hao, ataenda kutupwa kule mojari na tutampata na wazazi wake saa hii wanahusunika, hawatampata na hiyo uchungu iko kwa wazazi wake, haiko kwa huyu baba mwenye amemua.
Afadhali wangekaa chini waongea na huyo msichana kuliko kumtoa hai. Huyo msichana ameacha familia yake, maybe ako na watoto amewaacha. Hiyo ni mbaya sana amefanya. Na tumesikia vibaya sana kama wamama.
Jenga is currently being held at Kasarani police station as investigations continue. Meanwhile, the deceased's body has been taken to City Mortuary. Ngina Kirori, NTV.
All right, let's take a look at the news diary. That is the stories we are looking forward to right before we get into the dailies and today's conversation on GMOs. I can see President William Ruto in Korea, day 2 of that visit. And I can also see that the Crown Prince and Princess are in Kenya, day 2. We also have MPs push to halt GMO maize importation. That debate began yesterday in the National Assembly and it forms part of our discussion this morning. All right, that is the news diary. But what is on the dailies? Let's start with the Daily Nation. On the front page, maize. Korea faces tsunami. MPs allege plan to cripple sector. Revelations that Kenya will import 11 tons of genetically modified maize seed add to the controversy over GMOs that has seen MPs train their guns on Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria, with Pokot South MP David Kosing threatening to collect signatures to impeach him. In addition to opposing importation of GM maize, MPs want the government to halt its plan to bring in grain until local farmers' produce has been bought. Meanwhile, the cost of maize flour continues to soar. More on this on page 2 and 3. I also see on the front page, we have Ruto Raila face new headache in Mount Kenya. President William Ruto and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga are facing a tough balancing act in their efforts to maintain a grip on the vote-rich Mount Kenya region amid threats from their key allies in the area. More on that on page 4 and 5. And here is the main report on maize. Members of Parliament had a lot to say on the subject yesterday. MPs threatened to impeach the CS, that is Moses Kuria, and he is the trade CS, saying maize import will put farmers' livelihoods at risk. I can see here those MPs addressing the press outside the precincts of Parliament. Agencies silent on source of 10,000 tons of grain. The maize has arrived at the port before Gazette notice allowing importation has been published. And so that is page 2 and 3, page 4 and 5 address the Ruto Raila headache over restive Mount Kenya. So that is on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. All right, I see here on page 6, coast leaders warm up to Ruto. And let's take a look at what is on the front page of the Business Daily. But before then, I can see here Meru MCA's table motion to impeach Mwangaza. We have that report from Vincent Odwar. Let's take a look at the Business Daily. Bad loans see biggest fall in 15 years on asset auctions. Monthly defaulted credit fell 13.2 billion shillings in September. Banks up agreed property sales and debt write-offs. So this report by Charles Mwaniki, and I can see the CBK governor here, Patrick Njoroge. South Africa game stores face court threat over Kenya exit. This report by Boniface Otieno. South African retail giant Massmart, which operates the game stores, has fallen out with its employees over redundancy pay ahead of the retailer's exit from the Kenyan market. Taifa Leo's headlines are always a treat. Let's take a look at what they're headlining this morning. Aha! Second day, they're still on GMO on the front page. Kenya yaagiza tani 11 za mbegu za GMO. Mbegu za mahindi yaliyobadilishwa maumbile kuletwa kutoka Afrika Kusini kwa upanzi 2023. All right. anybody more fluent on my panel than me. Kiswahili. Professor Richard Odur, help me decipher this top line here. Can you see it? It's also on that screen there. Can you see it?
There is something down there that has...
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. So these are the seeds, not the, the 10,000 bags of GMO maize we are being told about.
No, he's just talking about 11 tons of GMO maize.
Oh, 11 tons of GMO maize.
Giza importing.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much for your assistance.
Cool.
Prof. All right, so that is the front page of the Taifalo. Let's take a look now at the Standard and the Star. What do they have for you or in store this morning? New school fees burden for parents. Kenyans who are already burdened by the high cost of living will be dealt a major blow as the government moves to end a school fees quote-unquote holiday. That's so some caregivers get a reprieve of up to 8,500 shillings a year. Basic Education PS Julius Juan says schools will revert to old fees charged before COVID-19 outbreak. I see here Kawira Mwangaza, the beleaguered governor for Meru County, and again the man of the moment, Moses Kuria. Maize imports MPs train their guns on Kuria. Barely 70 days in office, President Ruto's government is facing headwinds over its new policies. One such is a decision to allow importation of 10,000 tons of GM and conventional maize. Now, angry leaders not only want the plan stopped, but are threatening to impeach Trade CS Moses Kuria. An agency that will import the maize will be on its own. If Trade CS Moses Kuria continues with this, we will impeach him. He is not above the law and should respect farmers. David Kosing quoted there. And finally, so that I can invite my panelists to weigh in on this furore over the importation of GM food. Why wash threatens your job? Okay, this is the front page of the Star. And I can see up here they say new report exposes major flaws in Kenya's bid to fight money laundering. And experts warn that rampant money laundering could cut Kenya off international finance system. And several other reports highlighted on the front page. Mother's pain as son 11 dies in mysterious circumstances. Florence Aloch, mother of Vincent Oduge, the 11-year-old boy, was allegedly forced to drink acid. Okay, that is on page 2 of the Star. And I see here on the left-hand side, authorities conducting tests on recalled ARVs. Bill Gates, what I learned from my visit to Kenya. And at the bottom there, disabled man's agony waiting for 3.6 million shillings cash. All right, I think that pretty much covers it. I can see here on the back pages, lots about that game between Saudi Arabia and Argentina, at least as far as the Star and the Standard are concerned. On the back of the Daily Nation, I see teachers owed 1 billion shillings in acting allowances. Union accuses TSC of failing to confirm tutors who work in acting positions for a long time. This is a corporate chair, Amboko Milemba, at a press briefing earlier this year. All right, that is it. I'll leave the dailies there. So I'll introduce my panel to you this morning. I don't know which side should I start on. Professor Richard Odur, I have already introduced you. Department of Biochem, Microbiology, Biotech, Kenyatta University. We had you on yesterday. In fact, somebody today sent a question specifically for you. So I have that lined up for you as well. Sitting next to you, also from the University of Nairobi, Program Lead, Agricultural, remind me? Biotechnology. Agricultural Biotechnology, and that is Dr. Joel Ochieng. Happy to have you here at NTV. Is it your first time?
No, I've been here.
You've been here so many times. Fantastic. So welcome back.
Good, thank you.
All right, and sitting next to them is Samuel Kiboi, Professor Samuel Kiboi, and he is an GMO ecological risk expert.
Thank you.
University of Nairobi. So we have two University of Nairobi dons in the building representing JQ. It is a man who was meant to join us yesterday. Unfortunately, you got into a bit of, Yeah, road incident. Good to see you in good health and that you're able to join us this morning. This is Dr. Sylvester Anami, and he is a senior research fellow. JQ what?
Yes.
Specialty?
Biotechnology.
Biotechnology. So yes. A lot of biotechnology experts on the panel this morning. I'm curious, Dr. Anami, what do you make of this furore? Farmers, MPs have come out come up in arms over the importation of GM food. Has it come as a surprise to you? Did you expect it to some extent?
Yeah, so thank you for having me today and this morning. The truth of the matter is that it's not a surprise to me, because events that have been taking place were very clear that the cabinet and even the government has allowed the open cultivation and importation of genetically modified maize in this country to address a number of challenges, like, for example, food insecurity, in fact, which is taking place in a number of about 30 counties out of 47 counties in this country that are in their drought stress conditions. And therefore, in my opinion, especially from the members of parliament, my take is that we as the scientists are here in this country. They should be able to approach us so that we explain to them what is these genetically modified organisms and what is the benefit that comes with it. And of course, for the farmers, we have always been on these media platforms to be able to restore confidence in the farmers that this technology is good for them to address a number of agricultural challenges. And in this particular case, especially for cotton and also for maize, the PT, cotton and maize, is specific for the farmers in the sense that they are able to plant a variety that is resistant to stem borers, which is a very devastating insect pest in this particular country. And I therefore would like to say that, well, here we have the experts who are in a position to explain even to the politicians why we need GMO.
All right, the experts say they're here, ready to explain to the experts why we need GMO. I'm busy just trying to download your questions. Several came in already yesterday that we didn't get to. Several have come in this morning as well. But I thought we could hear from the farmers, right, who appear, based on what I heard yesterday. I asked our correspondents in the various counties to speak to farmers. So we had some team which spoke to farmers in the North Rift. I identified one farmer there who I felt spoke rather well. And several farmers, we heard from several farmers in Narok. Let me find out from my director, Mark Ndome, do we have those sound bites? All right, they're coming in. All right, but let's take a look at some of the questions which have been raised. And you talked of stem borer, and there's a question here around the same thing from a crop, is it crop development officer in Kisii County. But first, here's one of the questions that came in. What is the threat of GMOs to biodiversity, given that introduced organisms tend to have dominance? And I think I'll hand this question over to the ecological expert on the panel, Professor Kiboy.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being in your studios today. First of all, I would like to put the context of risk assessment. When you do risk assessment, we are like referees in a football match. So we are in a neutral position, looking at the evidence, the scientific evidence, and then we're able to make recommendations on the impact on the environment. And risk assessment...
Okay. Prof, I'm so sorry. I'm told your mic has a problem. But as we sort it out, Lois Wangui also spoke to some farmers. She's based in the Rift. So let's hear from said farmers before we hear from the farmer I identified from the North Rift and the several from Narok.
Mzee Thomas Korkoren is in his 70s and has been a maize farmer all his life, with maize in wheat being his staple. He is among farmers in the country who contribute to the 30 to 40 million bags of maize production in the country annually. But like most farmers, panic has gripped him following news of the importation of over 200,000 bags of maize.
Tungeaddress kwanza yenye tuko na nchi kwa nchi, lakini vile imeingia Mombasa na tuko na yenye hatujavuna hata tumalize, chakula iko kwa store.
Mzee Korkoren and fellow maize farmers in the country produce an average of 35 million bags of maize annually, leaving 11 million bags of maize a deficit which the government covers through importation. But the pattern is different this year. Importation of maize has happened before maize farmers sell their produce, and while still the quantities are way above the usual 11 million bags of maize, upon the offloading of the 200,028 bags of maize into the Kenyan market, the supply will topple the demand, reducing the cost of maize to millers and unga to Kenyans. But on the flip side, Kenyan farmers say they will suffer low pricing of their produce.
So tunaambia serikali millers watafurahi kwa sababu watapata chip, wenye wananua watapata chip, lakini mwenye kupanda, mwenye ameajiriwa kufanya hii kazi, amejiajiri kufanya hii kazi ya ukulima, atafanya nini?
The government's intention to further allow the importation of genetically modified foods, GMO, has added to farmers' unrest. Their worry is that GMO food will flood the markets, thereby injuring locally produced food, and farmers are also worried for the safety of the GMO foods.
Moses Kuria alisema kitu ya maajabu sana. Alikubali GMO ni sumu. Kwa sababu alisema binadamu kuna magonjwa mingi iko ndani ya binadamu. What is wrong with GMO kuja kuingia kuwa moja wao? Hiyo ni kumaanisha yeye alikubali GMO ni sumu.
GMO ni jina tu ndio imebadilishwa kidogo, lakini ni mahindi ile ambayo inakaa yellow. Sasa tumeikulaka hata miaka ya 88.
Farmers in the North Rift continue harvesting their maize, awaiting to hit the markets, a field in which farmers are anticipating a fight with the government. Lois Wangoi, NTV, Eldoret.
All right, let's now listen to one more farmer from the North Rift, followed by some small-scale farmers in Narok County.
Wafanye utafiti ya kisayansi. Wakiona ya kwamba si kitu ya kudhuru watu na inaweza saidia, sina shida. Lakini mawazo yangu ningesema ya kwamba wa exhaust chakula ambaye tunayo, chakula ambaye iko kwa nchi majirani kama Tanzania, Uganda, ambaye wanakuza mahindi pia siku hizi, Malawi, Zambia, wa exhaust hiyo kwanza. Alafu tumanye hii debate pole mpaka watu waelewe. Unajua watu hawajaelewa na wakitishwa wanafikiri ni kitu ya kuua.
Tukigusia hii mambo ya GMO, mimi sikubaliani nayo kabisa, kwa sababu umesikia kwamba hii ni kitu ambayo inakuzwa kwa maabara na inakuja kutudhuru kwa maisha yetu.
Serikali ingechukua kwanza hatua kuhakikisha kwamba wamefundisha wakulima kuhusiana na GMO, kwa sababu mkulima haelewi GMO na mbegu zake ni namna gani.
Tumesikia tu GMO na lazima serikali wasensitize kwanza kwa raia, kwa sababu hata hawajui GMO ni nini.
Mambo ya GMO inapinga kwa sababu chakula ambayo inapandwa na inamea kwa mwezi chache sio chakula mzuri, maana ita affect mwili ya binadamu. Ninaonelea heri nikule ile chakula nimezoea, ile inakuja kwa muda mrefu kuliko ile chakula inawekwa kemikali, ina affect binadamu na ataweza kupata madhara kwa mwili yake.
GMO chakula ambaye haipati miale ya jua, na wakati mwingi miale ya jua inasaidia vyakula. Mambo ya kanza, wale wamefanya na wale wamesoma wanajua kwamba chakula cha GMO kinaleta magonjwa. So wakati pia kiongozi wetu anasema kwamba mambo ya maradhi, vifo vya Wanakenya wanakufa na vifo mingi tofauti, si lazima tuletewe chakula cha GMO. kiendelee kuongeza maafa katika nchi yetu.
All right, so you've heard it. Someone said GMO ni chakula yenye inatengenezwa kwenye maabara. Somebody else said ni chakula yenye iko na kemikali. Then this fellow said, two fellows I think actually said, Moses Kuria admitted that GMOs will kill you. So there were those ones, as the gentleman who talked about cancer. So you have it, the people on the ground there, and then you had the ladies who are saying, you know, we don't even know. We need to be educated on what is this GMO. So you can understand, there's clearly a lack of clear understanding of what this animal, this GMO is. But first, Professor Kiboi, you were responding to this because this is another issue that has come up. These GMO seeds, what do they mean for our indigenous seeds? And that is a repeated concern that has come up. So this is a question again, just to refresh your memory. I think we've sorted out your microphone now. What is the threat of GMOs to biodiversity, given that introduced organisms tend to have dominance? Is this true? First of all, are they operating from the correct premise? Do introduced organisms tend to have dominance?
Thank you. And once more, I say thank you for welcoming me in the studios. I would like, first of all, to put the aspect of risk assessment in context. And when I say risk assessment, we are like referees in a football match, where we look at the scientific evidence, we look at the environment which the organism is being introduced, and we look at the implications or any potential risks that could arise. So for plants like maize, the first thing we look at is the gene that has been inserted in the maize. And then we look at what is function, what is it supposed to do. In the case of the maize we are talking about, it's called Bt maize, meaning that it has a gene from a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis that produces some toxins that kills insects that feed on the maize. Now, when it comes to now the environment, the first thing we look at is, or in terms of biodiversity, what kind of other species, related species, are in that environment. In terms of maize, the first thing we look at the center of origin. Center of origin is Mexico, it's not Kenya. So the first thing is that we don't have maize that originated in Kenya initially to be able to be in terms of losing the biodiversity. But then there are also other varieties and land races that farmers have cultivated for many years. So that is now a question that we address. But in terms of food safety, there are also other risk assessment experts who are specialists in food safety. But generally, the way I understand it, from a scientific point of view, Bt is not a poison to humans. That is my shot on this issue.
Okay, and I'll come back to you on the question of will we lose, and I remember we got into this a little bit yesterday with Professor Odwor. What does that mean for there's a question here, I'll read it, but they call it the indigenous or traditional, somebody actually called it traditional, I am the one who's calling it indigenous seed. But before then, Professor Odwor, GMO, I'll just have to ask you this question again, because you heard for yourself that there is a lack of clarity. Is GM food manufactured in a lab? Does it contain chemicals? What is GM food?
Well, thanks, Olive, again, and thanks for inviting me for the second time in a row. You see, from where we sit as scientists, we really admit that truly we haven't reached many, populace, at least the populace, to really understand the GMO. And to that extent, that's why you can see right now, and we have sensitized ourselves as researchers, that anytime we are called upon to explain some of these things, we respond very quickly. And you will notice that right now, many researchers are very yielding to your calls. And it's because we've realized that for a long time, we've been locking ourselves in research fields and doing our things without necessarily actually speaking it out there. And for genuine reason, because when you hear a member of public saying that we are manufacturing these GMOs in the lab, excuse me, you feel that you failed as a scientist, because this is one of our responsibilities to explain to the public. Now, all technologies, many of them, innovations, must start from somewhere. And this one started from the lab, and many will start from the lab. And a lab is just a generic term, including even the clothes that we are wearing. They were designed in the lab. So let's not stigmatize, first of all, the lab, because so many good things are popping up from the lab. The vehicles we drive. So the lab bit is not equal to the accidents or to death like it sounds, because right now we are actually soon going to stigmatize labs the very way we have stigmatized GMO as a word. And therefore we are very quick to defend that, because if we go that direction, we lose all the debates here. GMO is just the development of the same passes through the lab, but it doesn't mean, because why don't we grow them in the lab then, if they should stay within that very, very lab? My take on this and my advice to the populace is that let's address the concerns in terms of, and I had them yesterday and today I still hear them. If a farmer says that GMO crops grow within 3 months, and that is so fast, do we have foods that we eat that grow within 3 months and we still eat them? Beans, for instance, not GM, but it grows within 3 months and you're ready to harvest it. So is it the 3 months that is a problem? Is it the risk? And these are the kind of confusion that actually sometimes we sit back and we say, where do we start as scientists? Because 3 months is not a problem. There are many things that we eat that actually can even grow within a week. Some of the drugs that we take actually are expressed within bacteria within seconds, and we are already comfortable with them. And it's still fine. So even as we sympathize with the lack of knowledge out there, we are also getting a little surprised as researchers that this GMO debate actually requires a national classroom where we take all the farmers in a single class and just start breaking it down for them. Okay. In our mouths, when you are eating, and let me now break it down for them to understand, when you are eating fish and ugali, you are not identifying the DNA within the ugali because you are eating them together with the cells and the DNAs are in there. When you are eating fish, DNA is inside that cell, the fish. When you are mixing them in the mouth, actually, it is actually genetically mixed organisms in your mouth. Let me tell you, it's true, because you are swallowing them. You know, it's mixed. Yeah, it's genetically mixed organisms in your mouth because you are mixing them. We are not modified, but you have mixed them literally. But the next question is, when you eat this DNA, how come the following day you are not coming up with leaves because you have eaten maize? What happened to that DNA? And the moment we start breaking it down to that level, we will start understanding why we do this. And let me give another example. When you are eating ugali, you have a choice of eating ugali and salt and add water and sleep. Why are we running for fish? Because we are looking for proteins, right? And if we are looking for proteins, naturally, and we are assuming, like recently you saw in Lake Victoria, we had a scenario where all the fish actually died because of a scenario, all right? Now, assuming that trend continues and fish can no longer grow in Lake Victoria, what do we do? And we need fish. And do we really need fish or we need protein? Do we eat fish because of the color of it? Or do we eat it because of the proteins? So this is when we come in as biotechnologists and say, now Lake Victoria, because of the environmental constraints and everything else, can no longer hold fish. But we still require proteins. What do? You cannot take fish and maize and cross it so that you get maize and, and fish. Because naturally that has gone beyond the species barrier. Now that is when you need us, and you will call for us frantically because you need the technology. That is the time we come and say, fish, we need protein that we usually get from you. We go to the genome and sequence it and identify what section of this, because we are not looking for the scales. We don't want to eat the genes for the scales. We need the genes for the proteins. We identify that section of the gene, move that particular gene into maize and target it to the kernels. Now, at that point, maize will be called genetically modified maize. But literally, what have you done? Because naturally, you still eat the genes in fish. And now you're mixing it this other side. So that is where the discussion should be. And therefore, when we start talking about GM, we need to be very specific in terms of what exactly are we discussing. And I think, and this I can advise the Kenyans, that when the GMO gets here, shortly, the next question should be, what is the genetic makeup of the GMO that is coming? So that we discuss that particular one. Because we cannot sit here and discuss all the GMOs that are in the world all over. We will be actually having endless discussions.
Understood. All right, we need to take a break, but when we come back, we'll look at more of the questions that came in. One of the other questions that came in, Dr. Ocheng, I think you're up next. The new GMO maize that has been recommended for introduction to farmers is meant to control the stalk borer. You talked about which borer?
Yes.
The stalk borer? Stem borer? Is it the same one? Okay. There are, however, safer and environmentally friendly methods of stalk borer control, such as the push and pull method. I do not know about that method, but this is a comment from Neville Cyril, who is a sub-county crops development officer, Nyaribari Masaba sub-county. We get the answer from Dr. Ochieng on the other side of this break.
Jaundice is more of a symptom. So it's what you will see on the baby or the child or the adult. So it's basically a yellowness of the skin, yellowness of the eyes, yellowness of the mucous membrane.
We noticed that the eyes were not as white. After 2 weeks, the yellowness was increasing day by day. So I went back to the hospital. So the baby was put on phototherapy, but never improved.
So this could be an issue of obstruction in the biliary system, where the bilirubin now is reabsorbed back into your system. Some babies, you can check on their palms, you see their palms are actually also yellow.
So it was emotionally, financially, and physically taxing. I would question God every other time.
Did you know you can open a family bank account without having to visit a branch? Simply download Pesapap app from Google Play Store or Apple Store to enjoy freedom and convenience. All you need is your ID card, KRA PIN, and camera phone.
Want to learn more on investing? Well, we have you covered. Join us on the 30th November 2022 from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Sarova Panafric, Nairobi, for an investor education conference under the theme Saving and Investing Right. Come, let's have a discourse and widen your palette on saving and investing. Register and partner with us for an opportunity to present your investment ideas, tools, products and services to the attending patrons. For more information, contact Kate on 0721 758 909 or Boniface on 0724 596 333 or email bijalango@ke.nationmedia.com.
Who is a man and what defines a man?
Strong and sacrificing.
Passionate and purposeful.
Industrious and independent.
A leader and a lover. Ambitious and adventurous.
Provider and protector.
But wait, what of the weak and wounded? And what beats down and bothers the brothers?
What are the real feelings of the fellas?
Well, whatever season you're in, we welcome you to The Man Cave. What beats a Saturday afternoon with the boys, sharing experiences, networking, socializing, digging into good food, grooving to great music by DJ Jom Falme and Hype God, and learning from inspirational presentations by an eminent panel of men. From wealth to health, retirement, authentic relationships, coping with midlife crisis, or just re-examining your role as a man. Come to this gathering of men, The Man Cave. Saturday, 26th November, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Summer House, Karen. Grab your tickets at 2,500 shillings from Kenya Buzz.
The Man Cave. Be there.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
Oh, Right, just looking through your questions this morning on GMOs. Let me reintroduce my panel if you're just joining us. And do remember that you can text your questions on WhatsApp on this number 0701 963 000, 0701 963 000. And that is on WhatsApp. You can also hashtag AM Live NTV on Twitter. Already comments have come in. I have not forgotten you. I will get to you. We have Professor Samuel Kiboi, GMO ecological expert, ecological risk assessment expert, University of Nairobi in the building. Professor Richard Udor, Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology and Biotech, and Dr. Joel Ocheng, Program Lead, Agricultural Technology. Agricultural Biotechnology, University of Nairobi, and Dr. Sylvester Anami, Senior Research Fellow, Institute of Biotech Research, JQAT. All right, let's get to those questions. And I think we already looked at this one. And the question we were looking at was the one that came out, was raised by Neville Cyril, who is a Sub-County Crops Development Officer. The new GMO maize that has been recommended for introduction to farmers is meant to control the stalk borer. Is this the BT maize you are making reference to, Professor Kiboi? All right.
Yes.
There are, however, safer and environmentally friendly methods of stalk borer control, such as push and pull method. Dr. Ocheng, what do you make of this?
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks to the Crops Development Officer who is asking that question. In fact, we would believe that our ambassadors at the farm level educating farmers about some of these things. So I'll answer his question first, then I will talk to a broader policy issue around this discussion. Now, the first thing we need to understand is that other safer methods are already in place, but we still have the menace. As a crops officer, you must be aware that we still have the storm borer ravaging farms, even in Kisii. And so what we are bringing up is a complementary technology to those that exist. We are not replacing any, and we are bringing a much safer technology. Because the BT maize, for example, does not require any spraying. You don't spray the farm to kill the stem borer. Because spraying destroys the environment, is harmful to human health, and kills unintended insects or even pests. We want to target specific one that has bothered you on your own maize stem. So that's one. And two, the push and pull method, among others, as I said, are in place, but they have their own limitations. Specifically, push and pull requires that you plant something to act as a decoy to move away the pest from your intended crop into that one. You are using a diversion tactic. But insects, and any expert will tell you, entomologists will tell you, that they have something we call learning. They learn new things. So as you apply that diversion tactic, it will soon learn this one is much better than the one you are giving to me. So then it will still come back. So for some time, you will get it out of your farm, out of your maize crop, into that which you are using as a pool. And soon it will learn that this one is far better. So then it will come back. So you are heading nowhere with that. In fact, Isipe tried that in many parts of Kenya. But as we talk today, it has failed.
All right. Because
insects learn. They learn new things. And once they realize this one is better, for their welfare, they come back. So that's as far as his question is concerned.
All right.
Yeah, but there's a broader issue around this discussion that I think we need to, because I do both the laboratory part as well as the policy aspect of this matter.
Yeah, the people who are growing GMOs in the lab, I'm kidding.
Yes. No, yeah, I do both laboratory level and also at the policy level. Now, the discussion is centering around three issues that I would wish we separate. There is the broader economic issue about whether it is wise to import. Whatever it is, whether it's wise to import, and we are not going to be concerned with that because that's a different environment for other people, and whether the products that we call GM and what exactly they are safe for human consumption, and whether it confers benefits to farmers and to consumers. Those are the issues that we should be addressing. I will leave aside the issue of whether it is wise to import right now when farmers are harvesting for politicians to address. But I will address the scientific part of it. That the BT maize that even my colleagues have talked about confers benefits to farmers in that it protects your crop from pest damage, and therefore it restores your harvest. I am careful as a scientist to use the word improves yield. I've had people talk about BT maize improving yield. That's erroneous. We cannot say it improves yields.
You said
what
it
does,
restores.
Sorry?
You said it restores.
It restores yield. In other words, with temporal attack, farmers lose up to 60% of their crop. And so that may translate to 10 bags. Now, when you restore yield to where it should have been, then you find a farmer harvesting more than 40 bags in the same area. So I would technically say it restores yield. But I think we use the word improve yield for public communication because it's easier to understand. But I just wanted to also make it clear that BT maize doesn't require any Roundup application. You don't spray anything. You don't spray herbicide. Because in Kenyan farms, first of all, we don't have herbicide-tolerant maize because we have small holders. That's tiny farms that you can do with normal weeding. In America, where we have thousands of hectares, they use airplanes to spray Roundup because they cannot weed by manual methods, thousands of hectares. So we don't have that here. So as people discuss this matter, they should understand that in Kenya, we are talking about BT maize, which does not require any Roundup application. There is Roundup on sale, of course, but people are using it not because it's GM. It has always, in fact, I was born when Roundup was in the agrovet. It is not related to GM at all in Kenya. Its application is necessitated by the weeding issue, not because it is GM. And so we are discussing BT maize, which doesn't require any chemical application whatsoever.
Okay, because that was actually one of the concerns that was raised by one of the viewers. Before I get to your Twitter comments, there's another question that was raised, and this one I will give to you, Dr. Anami. Natural selection, somebody's speaking in my ears, so I was trying to multitask. Natural selection tends to present better results and resilience that artificial selection natural selection tends to present better results and resilience. I'm guessing this is meant to be than artificial selection caused by GMOs modification. What are the precautions and mitigation in this regard?
So thank you very much for that particular question. But before I tackle the question from this farmer, I have had an opportunity to be able to speak to farmers, in particular when Masinde Muliro University of Agriculture and Technology invited me for a webinar. And the truth of the matter is that there is lack of knowledge about GMO out there. And so let me try to define for them, because there was a farmer there that tried to explain what is this GMO. And in my explanation...
are you talking about the guy who talked about GMO, something miale ajua? What does he say? Oh, yes,
there was a lady who says, yeah, they've just brought us GMO, and we don't know what is this GMO.
Yes.
So, and that is, in fact, a fundamental question. Even if you have to continue talking about the mutation, what is it? So, in my explanation, it's very clear when we were growing up, our parents used to control maize stem or stalk borer using their soil from the environment. So maize is attacked, they take the soils and they apply on the maize, and then the stalk borers get killed. And they didn't know that there is a bacteria in that soil that's killing the pest. Now, organic farmers went further and isolated the bacteria, put it in the media, and then they made the biopesticide from the same bacteria. And in that case, they spray to the crops and they kill the maize stalk borer. The scientists, who are now the biotechnologists, take the same bacteria and then isolate the DNA and the gene, and they introduce it in maize, and it controls what the pest. So what the farmers used to do, what the organic farmers now today are doing, and what the scientists are doing is actually the same, but the mode of doing that is different. And each one of them has its own advantages and disadvantages. And so, in my opinion, the farmers need to understand and appreciate that the PT GMO maize is actually what they have been having since we were born in this world. Because the bacteria is abundant. Even in this room, that bacteria can be isolated. And therefore, there is nothing unique about the GMO that they are talking about. Now, there is another question. I'll talk about the natural selection because it's related to the dominancy of the indigenous seeds.
Yes.
Now, that's very important because...
Although I've learned from my panel this morning that maize is not indigenous
yes,
to Kenya. It came from Mexico. Go ahead.
Yes, that's very true. And so the issue of the loss of indigenous seeds is key. And the truth of the matter is we have several aspects that we need to look at. The first thing is there sexual compatibility between the GMO and the plants that are in the surrounding? If there is sexual compatibility, it can only happen with the wild types. And in that case, what is the fitness and the dominance of the hybrid that comes as a result of the hybridization? And we know for sure that in the event that the gene hybridizes with a wild type, that gene fitness is much lower, and therefore the permanence of it is in question. So there is no way a GMO maize can actually destroy and therefore interfere with the biodiversity. And that's very important to speak about that. And then there's also this other question about the biodiversity is also about the soil microorganisms surrounding where the GMO is growing. And I know I've said politicians talk about this, that you cannot plant again something there if you really planted the GMO maize. That's not true, because the protein that is expressed in the GMO maize is not excreted through the roots. And therefore, there's no way it can interfere with the soil microorganism, therefore interfering with the biodiversity there. So that is also something that we need to appreciate, that the GMO maize is very specific, precise for the control of maize stalk borer. And there is nothing else that we can say about many things. And there's the question that a farmer asked Professor here. When shall we have a genetically modified crop that does not use fertilizer?
Fertilizer, yes.
I'll help him, because in Japan...
can we pull up that question, if we have it? I believe it was the first of the two we received this morning, specifically for Professor Odwor, so that we are all on the same page. I'm just seeking to make sure that we are all on the same page. All right, there it is to Professor Odwor. When will you develop maize variety that do not require fertilizer to grow? This is the question.
Yes.
Oh, you're making reference to?
Yes.
All right. This is from Saul Paul, Nairobi.
He may have another different way, but I just wanted to tell the Saul Paul that in Japan, through gene editing, they have been able to generate a rice plant that releases a specific secondary metabolite into the soil that leads to the accumulation of nitrogen-fixing bacteria. They call them the biofilms. Now, the accumulation of the nitrogen-fixing bacteria led to natural fixation of nitrogen. So we call that biological nitrogen fixation. Those rice plants were not applied, the fertilizer was not applied, but because they were able to fix nitrogen by themselves through the help of the nitrogen-fixing bacteria, they recorded much higher yield compared to the ones that the fertilizer was applied. So he can be able to respond to that later on, but we already have a gene-edited rice that does not require fertilizer. So I've answered the question of the natural circulation, dominancy, and what are the mitigations that we need to be able to ensure that, in fact, gene editing and GMO are the best solutions for this country.
All right. So, Professor Kibwe, a question for you here from Junior Ondeng Moses. And this is in response to what you stated earlier, that BT maize has a gene from bacteria that produces toxins that kill insects. That maize is not a poison to humans. So Ondeng wants to know, what can these bacteria do to human beings? Where do they go after being ingested?
Well, the way genes work, genes is basically a code of 4 letters. And these genes, it depends on how they are arranged in the genome of any organism. For example, if you are talking about humans, we normally say we have a certain set of chromosomes. If it is you get a certain set from the mother and a certain set from the mother, and when a human being is formed, then you have what is called twice the number of chromosomes. These are arranged in certain ways along the chromosomes, and these are the ones now that express proteins. So when you eat maize, your maize is mostly composed of carbohydrates and some bit of fat tissue. And so when you consume that, it is not, the seed itself doesn't accumulate the toxin. And I would like to put it in the context of, say, in the US, where most of the maize or other GM products that have the BT, they are mainly, say, for animal feed, for example. When we come to development of, say, human medicine, it starts from testing with animals. And the long-term effects are studied. So if there was any effect, already it can be detected right from the animals. But as you're being told by Professor Anami, this BT comes from soil. It is a naturally occurring element in the soil, which is a protein that is expressed, that is now produced when the plant is actively growing. But that is not for me, basically. That is for the food scientists who do the risk assessment in terms of food. Mine is on environmental risk assessment.
Ecological risk assessment.
Ecological risk assessment. And this, we use a standard protocol. And this is something adopted globally. We have what you call the Cartagena protocol, which gives the steps that we follow for risk assessment, where we look at the organism, where it is going, and the environment, which is the recipient environment. So in this case for maize, my interest in particular, I understand the science that my colleagues are talking about, but my interest is where are you introducing it? What is likely to happen to that environment? Not just, for example, to the recipient populations of maize. For example, if in the social media, there has been a lot of images of maize with different colors and people seem to like them. So the aspects that are involved in risk assessment include what you like taking, if it's the taste. For the food scientists, they even test the taste, and they look at the equivalence. So when is it equivalent to the normal one that is being consumed? But for me now, I look at the biodiversity aspects, the land races that are there. So in that case, we look at, for example, if a farmer is growing GM maize and another one is not growing GM maize, what distances are we supposed to maintain so that there is no cross-pollination? Because gene flow only occurs through, mainly through sexual reproduction. That means there has to be a compatible recipient. So maize and beans, they cannot cross-pollinate to produce an offspring. It has to be another maize variety or a relative of maize. And that is one of the key things. The other one, we look at non-target organisms. For example, bees. If bees, we know they perform a lot of ecological services, for example, pollination. If you are told in your farm to go pollinating your crops, it's impossible and it's very expensive. So bees do it for us and other insects. So what we look at, are they going to affect non-target organisms? And studies have been carried worldwide, many studies showing is there a potential impact, for example, to non-target organisms. The other one is we look at, for example, what he called fitness. Fitness is something that gives an extra advantage to the, compared to the conventional. So if it is maize, is it going to maybe cross-pollinate with a wild relative and produce a superior offspring that is going to dominate, become a weed, for example? Is it going to become invasive? When you talk of invasiveness, we are talking about plants that take up entire ecosystems. For example, when you talk of a madenge plant in Baringo, Prosopis juriflora, it's invasive. It takes up and dominates the entire ecosystem. So in the wider context, I think for maize, but also generally, when you talk of GMOs, it's a blanket statement. So GMs, they have the specific gene that has been inserted in them, and in Kenya, it's a very narrow range of elements or traits that have been inserted in plants. So for, if I talk broadly, in terms of the imports and the growing in Kenya, the imports, what we ask ourselves, these GM maize, what trait has it been conferred? Is it coming from South Africa? Is South Africa growing BT cotton? Is it coming from the US? Is it, if it is US, is it herbicide tolerance that the maize had? And the food scientists will have done a lot of work on that to ascertain whether, for example, if you eat that seed, is it going to cause, for example, allergenicity? Because when the gene goes in there, it may, what does it do to the normal functions? Because genes don't have maybe just one gene producing a certain outcome. There may be like 3, 4 genes producing a certain outcome together. So those are the things that when you do risk assessment, we all do. Starting from them as biotechnologists, they start their risk assessment from the lab to the confined field trials before it's released to the public and for commercial release. Then the government agency involved, for example, our National Biosafety Authority, contacts independent people like me to do an independent risk assessment and verify their claims.
Okay.
So basically, that is how the process works.
All right. So, Prof. Odur, further the production. Oh, okay. I think it was Dr. Ocheng who talked about restoring yields as opposed to increasing or improving yield. All right, so here's a question from Daniel Nyagwara. Let me just see what he was making reference to. Again, the question of bacteria. But this is the point of the question he's making. Further, the production efficiency of BT maize is just but 4% above the regular maize under same production conditions. So why not enhance our production rather than be a consumer of biotechnology that portends ecological harm? Professor Odwar, are you equipped to handle this one, or should Professor Kibui take it?
Actually, all of us
Okay.
can handle this. But,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right. There are a number of questions here. Somebody is talking about the BT and how could it be dangerous to us. It's very basic that the BT, which actually expresses this protein or translates the protein, is a soil-borne bacteria. It is available, Olive, if you take your salads. Do you cook them? No. And if anytime you are not cooking salad, you are actually eating it with raw Bacillus thuringiensis. The reason why it's not affecting you and it affects the stem borer is because of the alkalinity that it requires. The gut for the stem borer is actually alkaline. And there's a mechanism of action why it kills that and does not kill you. Our guts are not alkaline, and that is the reason why it doesn't affect us. You see, the logic here is the same as the drugs that we take. And usually I mix these two drugs and whatever, because I have a training also in drug discovery. When you make a drug for, say, malaria, you know, how come that it goes and, you know, kills that plasmodium alone and it leaves your body? Your body is full of cells. Your cell and the plasmodium cell is basically cells. How come that it's so specific that it only goes to that? And that specificity is what guides even the development of these GMOs. We are saying, by the way, if that toxin, you know, was toxic to human beings, it would be here. And there are so many things we do in the lab that never gets out because we still feel that they never met the benefits that was intended. So when you see one out, you know, we celebrate because it's a lot of more other research that is ongoing. I like, and that, of course, Joel will certainly enrich that. I like the mind of Sean Paul, particularly of him challenging that why can't we think of having a genetically modified organism that does not require fertilizer application. I think I like that mind, and probably use this opportunity to invite him to Kenyatta University to join us in the lab, because this is lovely. Well, the motivation to do GM, because fertilizers are already existing, so sometimes we don't compete with things that are already existing. And that is actually the reason why we keep saying we are not bringing GM to replace fertilizers. We are not bringing GM to replace actually optimization of the value system for our production for the maize. We are not bringing GMO to replace, you know, there is a debate here about it is this or that, and that's not the platform. We are saying this is just complementary to that fertilizer that he's talking about, to that, you know, irrigation that they are talking about, and to that particular probably optimization of the value chain. Because people will tell you that, you know, the world produces enough food to feed its population. And it is true. And we are saying, who banned the, you know, the distribution of this food to reach our, you know, farmers and our people who are now dying? So continue optimizing. All we are saying that alongside irrigation, what is wrong with you irrigating actually a seed that now protects the insects? Because irrigation does not kill the insects. The insects will be there. What's wrong with restoring that particular, you know, yield? Now, this is what we do. So to ask him now, I want to respond to him as a genetic engineer and tell him how we can make actually a GM maize that is not looking for these fertilizers. You first of all ask yourself the question: what does fertilizer, you know, what does a fertilizer do? What do we get from fertilizer? And you realize that many of them are minerals. Okay, and therefore you look at the plant and say, if you can look at the ability of a maize or a plant to convert, you know, it is photosynthesis is a process. If it's able to convert that into, you know, contents and products that can actually, it can survive, it doesn't require the fertilizers. Remember, we are even talking about replacing the soil. Right now, in biotechnology, we are talking about replacing the soil because we don't like this idea where the roots go down and it doesn't know what it is meeting down there. And that is why hydroponic is coming into play. You allow it to grow on liquids because we know what is it that it requires in the soil. Actually, it struggles to even penetrate the soil. The tip there is trying to, you know, it gets a stone, it starts diverting and all that. So we are saying, why are we stressing these plants? Why can't we grow these plants on a liquid which we have put, you know, nutrients that it usually requires from the soil? So we don't actually probably need even to go making genetic modification for fertilizer. We just need to have Lake Victoria locked and, you know, cemented nicely, put nutrients there and have, you know, stuff growing. That's hydroponic. By the way, I'm breaking it down so that people can understand. Yeah. Because it's true. Plants actually don't like this idea of them being on the soil because it stresses them to start penetrating the roots and, of course, trying to find out whether there are insects, there are nematodes in there, there are, you know, pests eating on the roots. So they are struggling. If you are able actually to avoid the soil, the better. And that is why nanoparticles are now coming in. And soon you will see very interesting things because the climate is changing, the soil fertility, you know, it's also changing. Everything is changing, and we are stuck here with talking about very nice words, indigenous, you know, we talk about, you know, those things that originated from us. It is fine to talk about that trendiness, but I'm advising, and again I'm repeating, if you have that seed that your grandfather or grandmother had and they used to, you know, because I lived with one, we used to keep them somewhere on the roof where the smoke actually goes in and protects it somehow. If that seed is still there, we are looking for it so that we can bulk it and keep it in the seed bank because we will lose it very soon. Expression of genes are dependent on the environment. That is why Joel was saying that when you use a push-pull thing, when an insect comes here and realizes, whoa, this place actually is not very good, it will move to the next direction. What that also does is that if its food was on this direction that it has been told, not this side because we have repelled, you are feeling going that direction, it will go there and start starving. When it starves, before it dies, it will try that new thing, which was never originally its source of food. It will try. That is why you see, before we die, we start eating every cassava, including the leaves and everything that is not edible, because you are chancing. That is when this insect that you think you are protecting from eating its maize because you are propelling it, will start realizing, goodness, actually beans are better than maize. We should think beans, guys. Forget about the maize. And that is why some of these things, they have all their benefits and their disadvantages. And they should be actually looked at. The discussion at that point would be, how long does it take that insect to start preferring beans vis-a-vis maize? You see, that's a discussion that is very healthy. And we can go that direction. So, yes, it is possible to make genetically modified maize that does not require fertilizer. All we are saying is that sometimes it will require a number of genes to be moved because you are looking for one that will be attracting, you know, like purple acid phosphatase is one of the genes that we already have at Kenyatta University that gives maize the ability to solubilize, you know, phosphorus in the form that the plant can now pick, and without necessarily triggering the stragolactons, which actually is what allows striga to germinate and then affects the food. I went deeper a little bit on that just because I didn't know how to break it down further, because the stragolactone is just a stragolactone. But it is that thing that triggers, it triggers striga to pop up. Okay. So yes, it is true. These are possible, but Charles Paul, this is a very good question, and that's the kind of argument that we are asking. Because now, when he talks about this, he's already admitted that GMO is good. That's, we just make one that does not require fertilizer. That's a good person.
I see Dr. Ching wants to add to that. And as you add to that, perhaps you can respond to this question, another question from one of our viewers. What's the difference between GM food and, or there it is on the screen, and generic medicines or medicinal drugs, e.g. insulin?
Good. Okay, now first the extension officer. The benefit of BT maize, I will talk about 2 trials. The first is a confined field trial that was conducted in Kiboko, and the benefit was 40% yield, 40% more yield compared to the conventional that was ravaged by the pest. So that was 40% benefit.
So not the 4%?
40.
40,
yes.
Okay.
Now, in the national performance trial, because that was a confined field trial in one place, then now you go to national performance trial across the country. In the national performance trial, the average benefit was 38%. Now, that was done in several areas in the coast, in Western Kenya, everywhere across the country. Now, the 4%, I know where it comes from because I read widely. 4% is the benefit that you get from Roundup tolerant maize in the US. That's not the situation in Kenya. Because that one is not meant to increase anything. It's meant just for weeding. Now, because of the efficiency of weeding, you get a little more benefit than normal. That's what the 4% is about. It's not about the BT maize. The BT maize is 38% countrywide average, but in a confined trial in one place in Kiboko was 40.
All right.
So we're talking about above 30. Yes.
All right. So I'm coming back to you, Daktari, now to respond to the question of generic medicine versus GM food. But I hope you've gotten your answer, Daniel Nyagwara, because he's the one who said the production efficiency of BT maize is just but 4%. So we've been informed by Daktari here that this was in regard to Roundup tolerant maize in the US. All right, we take a break. When we come back, we get the answer to the question on this. What is the difference between GM food and generic medicinal drugs such as insulin? On the other side of this break.
Now,
Enjoy early Christmas offers. Join us on our open day on 26th November 2022. Call us on 0790-771677 or SMS LAND to 21595 for more info.
New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. With 5 oils and 5 vitamins. 48-hour nourishment. Helps reduce appearance of stretch marks in just 2 weeks. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care. For your shade of beautiful.
Climate change has turned out to be a reality. Unlike early days when it was seen as rumor mongering, third world people against the developed world, the reality now is that we have to deal with it. Floods have occurred in places where There was never rain like Chad. I, Otulo Owuor, will be part of the team participating in Kusi Ideas Festival 2022. See you there.
Carlos, someone has been using her phone.
Dad, we can't jump into conclusions without the phone.
That's why we need to find that phone. I can even have it traced if I have to.
You were right. Vigor was the one who crippled you.
That's what Victoria had to say to me?
That's right.
But why would she even do that?
Forever, my love.
Centum Real Estate has completed and handed over 500 plus homes within the popular and rapidly expanding prime neighborhood of Vipingo. Our estates offer a unique, secure environment and a wide range of outdoor facilities.
Hey, what's up guys? My name is DJ John Falme, and this Saturday I have an amazing plan for you, man. It's all about good vibes. Wanaume manze, come through to the summer house this Saturday. Tutakuwa na amazing panelists, amazing food, good vibes. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be DJing alongside Hype God. So come through and get your tickets on kenyabus.com. Usikose manze, this Saturday pale summer house, link up. Tutakuwa noma sana. The Man Cave, the only official men's event in town manze. Come through manze. Tutakuwa noma. Peace.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
Lots of reactions to the conversation this morning. Interesting ones. Dr. Ching, there's a question which has been posed to you, but if I can just quickly look at some of them. George here says, Omera Prof, GMO will kill our agricultural sector. If you look at the real content of this GMO, it's like another golden bug scandal. Where is government hurrying and bringing it here? And this is the season for maize farmers. So you were saying there are several issues which appear to have been mixed up. So this is one of those. But you said you're staying away from the issue of, is this the time to import?
But you can address it.
You can address it. All right. There's this question here. Okay, this is about Lake Victoria. Then somebody here, this is Alejandro Deshata, who says you cannot demystify GMOs. Okay, no. All right, I'm just going to skip that one. So guys are really talking about this fish of Lake Victoria, Professor. And then as we demystify GMOs, ask the experts if the Hass avocados, hybrid apples, short-term grown bananas, oranges, and the broilers we eat are fast food. Are they GMOs? No. Professor Doru, you were telling me yesterday, but it was off camera, that we don't have GMOs in Kenya. Because I was asking you about people saying this chicken whose leg is the size of a batter's leg. Is it GMO?
No, there's no GMO. That is just chicken that is being fed on biased food formulations. You know, Olive, if we want to sell you on the basis of weight, what we do in the morning, we give you 23 sausages, at lunchtime salads, in the evening pig fat. Then within 3 days you are fat and we weigh you and we sell you. That does not mean we have tampered with your DNA. It's just that we have triggered growth hormones and a lot of fatty acids and then placed them in different places in your body and we weigh. That is not GMO. You know, GMO, we talk about the DNA. So that is, and do we have people who are, for the last 10 years, we haven't had GMO in this country. Last 10 years, because there has been a ban, by the way. So all this weight that you have seen, all these cancers that you have seen, have been happening and there have been a ban. There have been bans on GMO in this country.
All right. So you think it's not fair to lay it on the doorstep of GM food?
We cannot lay it on the doorstep of GMO.
All right.
But I will unpack it on air.
All right. Here is Gitura Ihugo, who says the objectors of GMO are just a bunch of busybodies who will go around looking for something to oppose. Then let me see. We have Ogira Nathan, who says, as much as GMOs don't go well with the nationals of Kenya, but it's the way, oh dear, what did I press? It's the way to go in order to combat this drought and food insecurity caused by pest and climate change. And also GMOs don't need too much spraying. So it's a sure good option. That is Ogira Nathan. We have Ahmed Kiari Njoge, who says people are consuming lab-grown steaks in developed countries. They want to do away with rearing cattle. We have this gentleman is called Moha, who says these are the same types of proteins that organic farmers use to control insect pests, and they do not harm beneficial insects such as ladybugs. GMO, but corn reduces the need for spraying insecticides while still preventing. So this appears to be a person who's in favor of GMOs. Dr. Ocheng, is there a study on the safety of animals that feed on GMO maize stock? All right, so let me see. I think I'll leave it, Twitter, I'll leave it there so we can deal with the question of what's the difference between GM food and generic medicine, and then you can respond to this question briefly, whether there's a study on the safety of animals that feed on GMOs maize stock.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so now the question is about the difference between generic drugs, such as insulin, and GM foods. There's a difference, and there's a similarity. The difference is that they're meant for different purposes, whereas GM foods is meant to be eaten as food. Generic drugs are meant to manage the diseases and conditions. And the word generic here has nothing to do with the word genetic. It's generic because it manages a wider spectrum of conditions and diseases. I think people tend to confuse the word generic with the word genetic. So it's generic because it has been made to cover a wider spectrum. The active ingredient was tested and it acted on a wider range of spectrum of targets, and so that means it can manage a range of diseases or a range of conditions. Not everything is a disease anyway. So now that's as far as generic aspect of it is concerned. In terms of the
so
making,
the two are distinct.
Yes, the generic and genetic are different things.
Okay.
Now, in terms of specific ones such as insulin, they have been prepared using the same recombinant technology that is being used in making GM foods.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same. And many cases, the same organism. Insulin, it was prepared initially in animals, such as swine. And that was unacceptable to certain people for social and religious reasons. And the making of that insulin, producing it in swine, was much slower, and people were very needy. So then we saw that bacteria, I'm not making insulin, I'm just saying scientists saw that bacteria could reproduce this much faster, because you can get millions of bacteria multiplying very fast. So then we tried the recombinant technology in producing it from bacteria, and that saved the world.
All right.
So the insulin that we use is actually a recombinant. Would I use the word GMO? But not quite. Scientists will find me wrong, but for public understanding, let me call it GMO.
Mm-hmm.
The insulin is perfectly GMO. We use the same recombinant technology, exactly doing the same thing. Just that the bacterium used for insulin is different from the one used for BT maize, for example. But they're both bacteria, and they're both very safe.
Okay.
You can only use these things in safe systems. So that means the difference is the use. One is a drug, the other one is food. The similarity is that they're made in the same, exactly the same recombinant manner.
Okay.
So now if we accept insulin and other similar, including the COVID vaccine, which is also GM based, I think we should embrace, as long as the regulators have clarified that they're safe.
You may cause some people to swoon. But what about the question on animal feed?
Yes. Now, animal feed safety, you know, when you produce a GM product, there are so many safety assessments that are conducted, and that's what my colleague from the university was talking about, Professor Kiboi, that safety assessment is conducted a wide range of stages. It is tested on cells, that's what we call in vitro tests. It is tested on model organisms. Before it reaches humans, it has gone through those tests, including animals. So BT maize was tested on animals as well. And so the test was based on if you take BT maize, what happens to you as a person? And if instead you take it a triangular way, that you feed it on your animals and then you take the animal, either milk or meat, what happens? Is it still safe? What is the safety of the meat that comes from the animal? What is the safety of the milk that comes from the animal? And even other qualities, animals have in different capacities. All those have been tested and found to be safe. So there's no worry at all. By the time it reaches here and being put on the table, on the supermarket shelf for sale, it has gone through the test by the scientists who develop it ourselves, and the regulators, and the experts that the regulators hire. So what happens that we test it through the stages, from the lab to the field to wherever, and then the regulators start the same. They do the same. They test it themselves. They also give it to independent experts, such as him, to
what
also
he was
test.
talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
So all these have been tested and proven to be
Understood.
safe.
So, Dr. Anami, please take this question for us. Why are some countries not giving green light to GMOs?
Yeah, so thank you very much. So there was another question about the Terminator technology.
Oh, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. Yeah,
so, yeah, some countries are not giving green light to GMO on the basis of a number of reasons. And there has been this case of Zimbabwe, where the technology failed. And the main reason why the technology failed is because they had not developed the capacity necessary for the shepherding of this particular technology. You need to have the personnel, people with the skills, and scientists that are capable of taking care of the deployment of this particular technology. We did not have regulatory agencies in that country to be able to regulate the technology. So in that case, that's the reason why the technology failed. But in this country, we have the capacity. All the higher institutions of learning, all universities have actual courses on biotechnology and molecular biology. And even our own culture also has scientists developing PT or genetically modified organisms. We have at least about 8 agencies enacted by an act of parliament to regulate a GMO. So we have the capacity here to drive the technology, and there's no way this technology can fail in the phase of this capacity that we have built for a very long time. And that's what I think is the response. Okay,
so we have 3 more questions that came by way of WhatsApp messaging service, and one of them I remember you referencing as a question on touched on the Terminator gene, which I think we also addressed yesterday. This is George Njega. Elaborate on Terminator genes and its effects on local food security.
Yeah, so I'll tackle this question. And so the first thing we need to know about Terminator genes, you cannot be able to regrow that seed once you have the first harvest. But what I want to tell that the person who I don't know, remember his name? One,
George.
Yes, George. We have an international moratorium on the development and deployment of the Terminator technology. 2, the GMO seeds that come in this country and the ones Calero will give to the farmers does not have a Terminator technology. And on the issue of patent, this technology, the biotechnology itself that generates GMO, was given to Africans royalty-free. And therefore, we as scientists and as Kenyans, we can be able to innovate around the technology. And if you do that, you can actually patent. So when you use this particular technology or the seed, you are not required to pay any royalty to any company. You own it, and therefore the patent issues are not here or there. And we have also a regulatory agency in this country called KIPI that protects any innovation that comes from this country. And therefore, in fact, to bring the point home, the hybrid seed development is also on the basis of the fact that the robustness of planting the seed after the first harvest is also reduced. And therefore, in fact, also with hybrid seeds, they develop what you call the cytoplasmic male sterility for you to be able to get a hybrid. So hybrid development system is almost similar to terminator technology where you cannot regrow. But surprisingly, the farmers in this country have adopted the hybrid development system. But they cannot, have this terminator gene technology being allowed in this country. And therefore, that's very surprising that, in fact, hybrid seed development produces high yields. And for that particular reason, they need just to appreciate that science is here for the good of us all.
Okay. All right. If you can take a look at those questions that have come through WhatsApp so I can distribute them among my panelists. All right. This is the one you're making reference to. I think you've answered this one. Since these are patented seeds which cannot be regrown in the long run, will do more harm to the farmers and will be quite expensive because they're dependent on excessive use of fertilizer and chemicals. You addressed that. And
I addressed it, but then it's not true that there is, in fact, a GMO, especially and specifically the PT corn, does not require the use of a pesticide to control the stem borer. So it's permanent protection from the stem borer and therefore no use of pesticides.
Okay. There is also the next question on health, which you are also to tackle, if it can. The question you had put up on screen. No, the one previous, the one on the genome, human, there it is. Being informed that GMO can change a human genome and affect human health, which type of GMO can affect humans, as you say, for the one introduced does not affect? Patrick Mjomba, agronomist, Tharakanithi. Have you understood it?
Yes, I've understood it.
Okay.
Patrick, up to date, there is no evidence that GMO maize has any health risk or causes any kind of cancer to human being. There is no evidence. In fact, it is very, very safe for both human and animal consumption. And for that matter, it also calls for the fact that Patrick must appreciate that the moment you eat a GMO maize, the DNA is also digested. And the moment it's digested, like any other DNA from the foods that we eat, it's not available to cause any problems or health problems.
Okay. All right. Let's see the next question there. I think Professor Odur. Oh, okay. This one is, okay, let's. Kari Kenya is developing maize breeds, fast maturing and drought resistant. What's wrong with them that we can't use them in our country? This is Katumani. Oh, e.g. Katumani maize. This is John from Makueni County. Which of the three of you? Dr. Ching?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think one thing that we would wish to clarify is that different preparations, whether hybrid seeds or GM, maize or seeds or any other crop, are developed for specific traits or for specific characteristics. Katumani maize, the hybrid maize, was developed through selection over generations for drought tolerance. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it has been adopted by farmers across the country. What we are saying is that BT maize is now targeting an issue of pest. Because Katumani maize does not deal with pest, it deals with drought only. And to just correct this language, it's not drought resistance, it's drought tolerance. It doesn't fight back drought, but it can live with it. So that's tolerance. Now, what is specific to know here is that the BT maize we are talking about today, the one available and soon getting to the farmers, the gene, the BT gene, was inserted in a naturally drought-tolerant variety that was already developed through the same conventional breeding. So we were saying, because we want people to adopt it across the country, what do we do? And it was said now, can it be introduced into a variety that farmers have been adopting across the country called drought tego? It tolerates drought. So it's more like taking advantage of what already exists as drought tolerant, such as Katumani, and adding insect pest protection. So we are just adding on to, we are improving on that. We are not bringing a new thing.
Okay.
We only bring a new trait to add on to the already existing trait of drought tolerance.
All right. Next question. You know, Prof, I'm timing the silly one for you. Here it is. Take it away, Prof.
Huyu mama amesema ya kwamba yeye hushughulika na mambo ya export za vyakula tu. Alafu vikifika pale US, zikipatikana vina chemicals, basi pale vina, vyakula hivi vinarudishwa, like they are sent back. Na kwa ukweli, na amesema hata na kwamba sisi kama wanasayansi, labda sisi ni GMO ni sumu tu, na sisi ambao tunaendeleza mambo haya ya GMO kidogo ni kama sisi hatuamini kabisa vyakula hivi, and that we are not honest. Ningependa tu kumwelezea sisi tunaotetea GMO nyinyi ni kama, you know, we are not honest with this. Now I would tell the lady very ably that the chemicals that she's talking about are coming from spraying. If you spray, you know, pesticides, and then there is something called MRLs, which are minimum recommended limits, which is something that KEBS does very well. There is this PBP also somewhere here dealing with the pest control, and many other organizations. There is a limit that is global, that above which you shouldn't, the different countries cannot accept. And that is as a result of farmers themselves failing to actually giving particular time for the residual pesticides to really decay, so that by the time they are going abroad into those markets, they are below the minimum recommended, you know, limits or threshold.
So these are the, because yesterday we got a tweet about farmers rushing tomatoes to the market before. All right.
And that cannot be a discussion that is also confused on GMO. You know, that one is a discussion, even any food that you are spraying, sukuma wiki for instance, and there have been complaints in the country. You know, unfortunately, people don't understand GMO to an extent that any bad thing is attributed to GMO. Because, for instance, somebody says chemicals, sukuma wiki. Where did the GMO, who touched the DNA so that it qualifies to be within the same platform?
Those big sukuma wikis are not GMO?
No, the big sukuma wiki that is not GMO. Do you know, even I hear people say chicken, this chicken that we see in the whatever are GMO. They are not. Those are just chicken that have been given, you know, raised with biased food, with sufficient growth hormones so that they grow faster. Because the farmers themselves are interested in selling them at a particular weight. If you start telling them that the leaner, you know, the better, just change that narrative and say the smaller the chicken, actually it will fetch a lot more in the market. You will never see those big chicken again in the market. They will make
those big sukuma wiki?
You know, the big sukuma wiki is and what is wrong with big sukuma? Honestly, is it because it is big? It's not like the sukuma wiki is the biggest living organism we know. There are elephants, and there are other bigger things out there. So it's just because, actually, from where I sit, I would say that if it is big, the better. We can, four of us, share in one, so long as the content is verified. There is a reason, and let me now break this for our viewers. There is a reason why, world over, and this is not unique to Kenya, countries establish regulatory authorities or agencies. Do you know right now, if we want to create another story in this country, we will start saying, these guys who are making vehicles from Japan, you know, and now they are even timed, they can even switch themselves. You know, these guys can even make vehicles that when you want to brake, they can't brake. And that's a possibility. But why are we not talking about that discussion? It is because we believe in the regulatory agencies. You know, when the first aeroplane was out, do you know the reason why? You have flown out in the country, and when you're seated there pretty and you're about to take off, do you know what and I'm not pretending to be one of them, cabin crews will tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading out. They never tell you that the probability of reaching your destination is 50%. Because that's the truth. If something happens with the plane, there's nowhere else to park it, right? So it comes down, and the probability of reaching there is either you reach safe or you reach dead. Do you know why don't they tell us that, ladies and gentlemen, sit pretty, our pilots has experience anyway, but we assure you that, you know, the probability of reaching the destination is 50%. The reason why they don't bother with that, because the process of getting a plane to fly starts from the lab, goes through the process of regulation, such that if it goes and passes all these stringent measures and it is cleared by the aviation authorities and said, this one is good, let it go. Please spare us the details of 50% or not. That is the same thing we are saying. Please regulate this GMO from the lab like you are doing. You have said, that's why before we start, you say, what do you want to do? We stop you at that point if we feel it's not making sense. You go to confined field trial, we monitor and say, is it doing what you thought it would do in the lab? It's not doing. Stop it there. Okay, it had gone through national performance trial. Is it better? If it is only fine in one place, we don't want it. We want it to be in different places. That is what is called national performance trial. And it is also done. That is what Joel was saying. In a single place, it was 40. In different places, it's 38. That means that, okay, we can still move it to the next layer. When it goes out there, there is something called post-release monitoring. When this GMO is cultivated out there, regulatory agencies are monitoring. How is it behaving? Is it losing its vigor so that if it loses, we remove it off the shelves? It is not the first time that new technology is coming in. What I'm saying, there is wisdom. There is a reason why scientists do science and regulators do regulation. So as it is right now, if we start discussing GMO and somebody wakes up and says, you know, how about you people making, you know, taking a gene from probably a bird and putting it into maize so that maize sings like the birds? While that is probably possible, and I don't know how many genes you will need to move, is it what we need right now? And if somebody makes that for their own fun and finding their maize that is singing, it is fine for them. If it comes in the country, NBA will be asking, does Kenya require that now? Do we need to incur that cost right now? And that is the discussion we are having. Let's discuss, actually I expected this country, instead of discussing GMO in bulk, because GMO is GMO. In bulk, they should be asking questions. What is the content of the GMO modification? What is the GMO that is coming? Then you challenge us here and say, we are aware from NBA that whatever is coming is BT. So let's talk BT. Because we can't talk about now other things that are not here. It's just like we are just here for you know, the fun. Right. But anyway, quickly, generic drugs that Joel talked about, the reason why we call them generic is because of some background in drug discovery, is that when you develop a drug, you patent the whole thing, and it happens for 20 years. So what companies do, like in India and many other parts of the world, the cost of producing a drug from preclinical to clinical trials, which is there are a lot more of research in between, is very costly. So, and it costs billions of shillings. So what other organizations do, and this is what I'm even encouraging Kenya government to do, is that you have experts whose work is just to scan through the patents that are about to go off. So 2 years before the patent is done, the 20 years are done, you're already making the drugs in your company. So the night when the patent collapses, you are in the market. At that particular point, that's a generic drug. The generic drugs are drugs that are sold. They have the same properties and everything else, but different from the ones that are already branded in the market. They do it a lot more.
All right. And I want to invite the rest of the panelists also in a minute each, right? If there's one thing you want to leave with Kenyans, just one thing on this thing of GMOs, what is it? But Jane has taken issue with me, akona kesi na mimi, but I think you've addressed this question, Professor Dor. Her question was, she says, my question was never answered. Does Kenya's regulatory body, NBA, have capacity to regulate GMOs once the market is open? In short, yes or no?
Very yes.
Yes, all right. How will the anti-GMO consumer be protected from unlabeled GMOs, just like KEBS lacks capacity to control counterfeits in the market? A valid question.
There is a law in the country on labeling. Here, you cannot sell GMO without labeling. That's a law.
Okay, but she's saying if already we have counterfeits in the market, how can we trust that the labels that shows organic or GMO can be trusted?
Yeah, that is just like saying that why do we have thieves in the country and yet we have policemen?
So you're saying this is beyond
No, that one is now a regulatory thing, and we should just have some little trust in our, in our National Biosafety Authority. Really, give them opportunity before you start bashing them. This is one organization that was established by Parliament. For the last 12 years, it has been here. It has capacity. The CEO has a PhD in this area. The first CEO was a PhD holder. The second one was a professor. The current one is a doctor with a PhD. So they have capacity, and biosafety officers there, all of them have master's degrees and above in this particular area. Let's give them opportunity, really, to serve us. Otherwise, there was no reason for it.
All right. In a minute or less each, if you're to leave with Kenyans leave Kenyans with one thing on GMOs today, what is it?
Yeah, so for me, I will ask Kenyans to believe in their government because they are doing everything possible to ensure food security in the country. I'll ask Kenyans to believe in their regulatory agencies. They are doing a very good job. they should believe in science and the evidence in the science and stop listening to the misinformation, disinformation and malinformation that is actually out there. And also promise Kenyans that now we are moving far away from GMO and into other revolutionary technologies such as gene editing. And therefore, we need to encourage Kenyans to adopt this technology, adopt the new technologies that are coming in order to be able to revolutionize and modernize our agriculture.
All right, Professor Kiboi?
Thank you. I think my parting shot is that generally, and here as I talk as a Kenyan, I think the public perception is very different, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to educate the public. First of all, from even their normal cultivation methods, what are they eating every day? If it is chemicals, agrochemicals they are spraying, and people, mostly when they hear about GMOs, they are talking about cancer and those diseases. What kind of food are you eating? The lady who wrote about exports is because the other governments, they really check what is in their food. What is in our food, food that we consume every day? That is very, very important, even as we talk about GMO or non-GMO. The other one is socio-economic and political. And I think it has been handled a lot yesterday. I'm not a politician, so I think those issues, we all need to listen to our people, because you cannot shove something in people's mouth if they are afraid. If I feel that if I take a cup of tea, it's going to give me a stomachache, and I'm convinced it is. So what do we need to do to convince such people that it's okay, and to assure them that what you are doing is for their own good?
All right.
So in broadly, I think I can end there.
All
Thank
right. Professor Dwar?
Well, the food security issue is a challenge. We all know what it is, and therefore it requires a multi-pronged approach. Just like clever monkeys who don't hang on a single branch, we are requesting that allow GMO to be part of also the alternatives that are going to complement the already good work that is happening in terms of irrigation, fertilizer we are seeing is being subsidized, and many other good options and alternatives that we are talking about. Let's be a little accommodative. Let's the public to appreciate that we are here to really support, and we will be also looking at whatever is coming in. We will support the capacity of NBA if called upon, because we require to make this country food secure. We will support any attempt to try and make this country food secure, and we are privileged to serve in this country.
All right. Dr. Ching, your parting shot?
Yes. First, I would want to appeal to Kenyans to understand that we have different varieties of GM products, and the one meant for Kenyan market that's ready is BT maize, and it doesn't require spraying with Roundup or any other chemical, and it has been proven to be safe by the scientists themselves and the regulatory systems that we have in Kenya that are competent, and they are labeled by law in Kenya. All GM is labeled so that consumers can choose for themselves if they want to take it or not. And I would appeal that we separate the two issues of importation from whether GM is good or bad.